angels, find your own voice, labor within. With me today, the Tan and Shireen Love Groove. Please, Shireen, introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Hello, I'm Sherry Lovegrove. It's lovely to be here, and I hope that you're all well. I'm the conscious pregnancy coach, and I help high functioning women that are pregnant to have the birth they desire and want. So that's really where I'm moving. And most of the women that I work with are women that really suffer with imposter syndrome, and they're struggling to be able to have the birth they desire. So I just make that birth so much easier.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shireen. I have no idea what happens to Dr. Bigot. So we do have echo. Are you muted, Shireen?
No, I'm not muted.
Would you like to mute yourself when someone looks like there's a feedback?
Let me.
Okay, she's back. She's back. Introduce yourself, Dr. Bigot, and please run out.
Thank you, Numsa, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, it's thank you for allowing me to be with you, and I am with Dr. Brigitte Tan, and I am a grief specialist. I am here if you ever have an experience where you feel that there are just changes. A lot of people misunderstood about grief and think it's only from death, divorce, or diagnosis, or job loss or something, but there are actually more than 40 different causes of them, and include, of course, death. And so I'm here to help you navigate and move through the challenges and the ups and downs and the turmoils of life.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bigot, and to our audience as well. So our topic today is, why is it so hard for people to talk about death? Death is very uncomfortable. Everyone knows that. And most of us, we don't want to talk about it, and we don't even want to plan for it. And when something happens, we are faced to face the reality and of the situation, and everyone that is watching may know that death is inevitable, and so we don't choose when someone is going to die, and we don't have a plan. We don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, but no one wants to talk about it. And I'm one of those people as well that I do not like to talk about that. To Bigot, what do you think about this topic? I know you have clients. Is there a way to do so? How come you can't share?
I'm not sure, but I don't know. But the topic is an interesting one. When I look at that, I say, it's a very interesting things. I would say, first of all, that is not with everybody and every culture the discomfort about talking about that. There are cultures, mostly are sorry, in indigenous cultures, mostly are indigenous culture that who are, as a society, they are comfortable doing that. And as a society, the member of the society, they are comfortable about talking about that and celebrating that, and they see it a little bit differently than most the Western society see about that. Now, here though, in the Western society, you live in the UK, your backgrounds was a different country with myself, as well as now here in the United States. The society we have are uncomfortable talking about that. And therefore, we as a member of the society, a lot of time for most people are not comfortable. But if you think about it, I think there are a few different reasons. I mean, just let me ask you, when you think about, if I ask you to think about a picture of that, right? I give you the word that and I ask you to describe it in picture form. What image come to your mind that has been instilled by society, by storybook, by children book, by your adults when you were growing up? It's usually the image with this with the one image that come to my mind is this being in a dark or black outfit and wearing this thing that look like it's going to smack your head with it. You know, this gory image. And then the other thing of that is this skull image. If you look around Halloween time, which coming up soon, it's like this is depiction. So, you know, the skull with a crossbone. And then the other image that you might come to your mind is, you know, the cemetery and the image of people crying. Is any of those image suiting? No, absolutely not. And so who would want to talk about something that gory? It is, you know, I mean, now imagine if your image about that is a celebration of a community. That would have been just a little different. That would have been just a little different, I would imagine, than people takes on the passing. And then also there is also what's the definitions and the reactions of people to that when we're growing up. But that is even that image, I would say, what's for society depicts about that, and the definitions of in dictionary, if you were to look at it, then that alone could make people just have this horror story playing in inside of their mind about what that is and who wants to talk about it. What about you, Shireen? What is your thought on that?
I don't know whether we'll have any feedback here. I hope that it's all right now. Yeah, it was really interesting that you brought that up about have that picture. What's the image that you see? And I'm actually I'm very lucky because I have been kind of aware of death a lot through my working life as a nurse. And so I've worked a lot with death. And I've had a lot, and you know, part of my very first nursing experiences was when we laid out bodies, was to really go with this idea of celebrating the life, right? Treating and laying out this person as though they were living and you still honoring that living part of them for that moment in time. So that I kind of remembered that. And then I had a lot of very, well, probably spiritual experiences where I actually would see or feel that there was a presence. So I always got the sense that there were people waiting. So I never had a negative belief about death throughout my entire life. But I do know that there is this unbelievable feeling of loss and the feeling, and I wonder whether death brings in the grieving for the life we might not have had. So we think about death in a sense of all what we're going to miss out on because we might not have lived life in the way we needed to. And that's a really interesting thought that's just kind of come in. I thought, oh, well, that's probably where that is. But I'm very much at the moment, as you know, in the UK, we have had the recent death of our Queen. And I'm so aware of how there is this grief that is going on. And it's almost like people are seeing the Queen as their family and they've identified with their family. And this has created a whole big collective grieving. And I'm curious about that in a sense of how that plays out, because I haven't been as emotionally driven by that as when I was when Diana died, and there was that other outpouring, yeah, when she died, and there I was very much affected, and I'm I sort of think, well, as my partner said to me, well, she was a 96-year-old. She was going to die. But there's this non-preparing for death. And although when the death happens, it's never what we expect, yeah. But there's this non-preparing for this new life, and we see it as an end instead of a beginning, a transformation instead of a composting. So we don't see it in a very helpful way. So yeah, those are some of the thoughts. And when you had that image and said, "What's your image?" The image I saw was Earth, right? I saw Earth because when I think of the word death, I think Earth. So I saw the Earth coming and claiming and taking and looking after you, because you go back and we sort of in the Bible is from dust to dust. You go back from dust to dust you came, and to dust you'll return. And so I always think about that as the process going back to the earth. We're here for a limited period of time in this body, and so we will go back, and that's a celebration in a way. We go back and we nourish the earth. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sharon and Bickett. I love it, Dr. Bickett, when you say, imagine the image that you have in your mind. And also, Sharon, you mentioned that it's never what to expect, that we end up, we end up, we don't accept death. We think that there's no ending when it comes to life, but life is an end. It's like your spouse. He sees her as someone, he sees the queen, when he says she was 96, somebody is being horrific. She lived her, so cherish good memories that you watched her working hard, and cherish those and model those memories instead of weeping and grieving. And I was reading the scripture yesterday when Jesus was telling the disciples that he's leaving, and they were all grieving and stuff, and he said, "No one is where I'm going, but you are all grieving." So I asked myself yesterday, and I was like, whenever I've got problems, like right now, the queen is gone, all I hear is, oh, people sometimes they are really sad. Instead of cherish the good memories, or whenever I'm going through something green, instead of me actually cherish the memories, cherish what going on and be grateful, like just focus on the grieving part. So I was like, okay, so that's what the scripture says. Do let your heart be troubled if you believe in me. So like, okay, so I'm not gonna grieve, because the scripture says, look at you all, you're all grieving, instead of to go to heaven and go in peace and rest peace. So Dr. Bigot, how do actually somebody can you avoid being traumatized by the death of your loved ones, or you can't? Is there any techniques that you can use, or no, you can't?
So a couple things about that. Thank you for asking that, Numsa. Excuse me. So first of all, I love how Shireen says it, her perceptions about that, and that is very true. The other reason I mentioned one is the image. That's why people so much not want to talk about it. And the second part is the loss, right? A lot of people associate that as loss. Few people associate that as transformation, but most people associate that as loss. If you just even see most greetings when somebody has passed away, people say, "I'm sorry for your loss," or something in that aspect. And so the people take it as a loss, and nobody want to lose anything. No religion. It's as a society, we are taught to acquire. We are not taught to release. Now, notice the second part. I did not use the word loss there. We are taught to acquire. We are not taught to release. There are few occasions where you do things like releasing dough for something as a symbol, but otherwise we are taught to acquire and not to release. And so when we have something that we're not releasing, and that's no longer there, we feel that that's a loss. They feel that it's taken from us. Instead of seeing it the way as Shireen said, it's kind of borrowed time or a borrowed what have you. It's you here for a certain amount of time. The person in your life is there. Cherish and enjoy it now because everybody's time limited. So as a loss, and with loss, and that is really is the definitions of grief. Grief is the normal and natural reaction to loss, and that is and so think about it. Grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss. And the thing with a lot of people and the positive thinking, I'm nothing against positive thinking. So if you some of you know me, I'm a very positive person, so nothing against positive thinking about the scripture or something. I was raised by scripture as well, but a lot of time that's actually invalidate a person normal and natural reaction when somebody feels that because of the way they were brought up or whatever belief that they adopted that it's a loss, and you say grieve not, then you invalidate that person's feeling. You do not allow that persons to be normal and natural. When you have somebody experience some a passing, and you say, but that person's not even related to you. I mean, she's the Queen of England that you've never met in person. And actually, you never even been to England for all that matter if the person's from different country. So what are you going to be sad about? That's the same thing. You invalidate that person's feelings. And feelings always valid. Our thought can go away, but our feelings, I said, feelings of every person's, and practically our grief coach says this, your feelings always valid. And therefore, it's actually that the additional layer that what makes people very uncomfortable talking because they feel sad, they feel angst, and then they if they express that in many scenario, then they got invalidated. They say people say you don't need to grieve. There's no reasons to grieve. While grief is very always unique and personal, and it could be you lose something seemingly very trivial, and its impact you significantly, and there is multiple reasons for that. But there is that's also what makes people uncomfortable. What makes discussions about death and grief taboo is because of the invalidations that people experience.
I love that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do you have a comment in
I
that
was just
one?
going in because I thought, but thank you so much. You brought up such a wonderful topic, because I was actually going to talk a little bit about how does grief affect, or not grieving affect, our mental well-being, and do we need to learn how to manage grief in a better way for our mental state, particularly because there are many losses. There's not just a death, isn't it? We can grieve because someone's walked out on us. We can grieve at any time. We have one moment we have something, and the next moment it isn't there. So there is that feeling of not having. And I think that what you said there is so poignant, and I want to just keep that alive here, which is the idea we're taught to acquire and not to release. And we think about, when we talk about the idea of the person who, the first psychologist that won a Nobel Prize, Cunahan, basically, which was all about losses and gains, and how we feel more pain with loss than we do with gains, and which means that we may not necessarily appreciate as much because we're so busy trying to accumulate, and we're living in the world where we're still feeling we're at a loss. Yeah. And we never quite gain, and we never sit in the gain. And so we are, in a way, unable to understand or even comprehend logically how to release, how to not be attached, to how to, I think there's a structure for release. I absolutely do. And I certainly think that that's something that I really want to hear more about, what you were talking about. But the idea of invalidating feelings being one of the key things, which I think is a misnomer that everybody grieves the same, and a misnomer that everybody will grieve for the same length of time. And, even somebody, it's interesting, even somebody who may not even show very much emotion could be grieving so deeply. They just haven't got the same way of expressing, whereas other people might have this huge emotional outburst, but they might quietly sit and grieve by writing stories or something like that. So I was thinking about that, and I suppose I'm always going to have this backdrop right here of the Queen, and how do we release and let go and move forward. And I have been wondering about, is this collective grieving actually grieving for the last 3 years? So this has just given us a focus to grieve on, right? So many people died during COVID, and so many businesses went broke, so many relations, all those sort of things, lots of stress in a lot of ways. And are we, maybe we didn't have the opportunity to grieve for that. And so this is giving us a collective kind of place to grieve. And I think that that's kind of a deep honoring of the pain we suffered. So I'm just sitting in that, and I'm thinking deeply about that. What do you think about that, Nomsa? The idea of the collective grieving, and maybe about something else as well as this. It's just the icing on the cake that allowed the process to happen.
For me, I think grieving is when I hear someone grieving, like, let's say, if I hear about death, if I hear that someone is dying, the next thing that comes in your mind, I don't know anyone else, but for me, the next thing that comes in my mind is like, this person, have they accomplished, like the Queen? The Queen, she's 96. Yeah, I'm happy for her. She's had a good life. But if it was someone younger than her, the questions that comes in my mind is, did this person accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish? And also the disputes of fears of family, inheritance, and just facing all that journey. Who is going to take what? Who is going to take what? Who's going to arrange the funeral? There's so many things that goes with the death. Sometimes the family torn apart through that death, and that's what I think about when someone dies. It's like, for me, if I die, I have to make sure that I write every detail so there is no fight, because I see how people do. After reading that script, I think I have peace within since yesterday. I felt this peace with that. I think I need to, as a person, I need to know that if I'm dying, I'm going to heaven, and I'm going to start a new life. I don't know what life that might be, although my body, I leave body behind. but there was this fear when I heard someone dies, like my father died. My father died, he was 60. And I felt that I hadn't had enough time. If I was being greedy, I felt that I hadn't had enough time with my dad because we were so close. And I felt that there was something that God gave me a chance to be with my dad. But I had said my piece. Sometimes they say when you say goodbye, when you have peace, but I didn't get that peace myself. I wanted more of him. I don't know if Dr. Bigot is going through the clients that have felt the same thing as well. It's because I didn't have the knowledge. When you don't have knowledge about death to me before the fear. So if there was a cupboard for me to hide, I would just hide. And you tell me that somebody died. So yeah, but now if I hear someone like when I had the queen that she was in hospital, I think this is it now. Her husband has been gone for a year. That was the man that she loved. She had known and spent the rest of her life with him. And now he's gone, but I think she's going. Even though they kept she's alive, I knew that she was gone. But there was this part of sadness that not gonna see her on television making speeches, even though sometimes I don't really pay attention. So I'm just gonna be honest. If I know that she's there, that gives me a happiness that I know she's there. So those are those things that for me that with my father that affected me. I lost my dad, I lost my stepdad. But my stepdad and my dad were the people that I was really, really close to. And I felt that only God can give a second chance to actually spend time with them. That will make things. But when I through the grieving and accepted the death and letting it go, I was fine then. But there was this thing where who is gonna the funeral, my mom, is she gonna get married? Those were the fears. Again, I felt in my heart I don't want no more daddies. I felt that I cannot open my heart to somebody else. Those were the fear. I don't know whether it's normal, but when I heard that my dad is dead, my stepdad is dead, and the only thing was like these are the people that I'm always close. They're my dad and they're my daddies. If my mom gets married, that means I have to. My heart, I felt that I'm praying these two. So I had to ask them, is there a chance that one day you want to get married? Because I wanted to prepare myself. I know some people they don't, but I wanted to prepare myself as well so I can open up to her and letting this grief that wants to hold activity, my dad and my stepdad just and she was happy to explain I've been married twice. I don't think I want to do it and I think I'm done now. Your stepdad was my best friend, so that gave me peace, but at the same time I accepted it and going through prayers it was like whatever happens she might change her mind, but I'm happy for her. And thank God she never got a relationship, so I thank God for that. So I figured whether you ever had clients or weed, they were the widow after that. My dad and my stepdad, my stepmom, or do you feel have you gone through similar things with your clients? Because honestly, that's how I felt when they went, and feeling like my mom ready to have another dad. The third one, I was like, that would be too much for me. Can't hear you, Dr. Bigot.
Thank you.
Bigot,
So then
you're muted.
am I still muted now? You should be able to hear me now.
No, you're okay now.
Can you stop? Okay, great. So the Yes, it's one of those beautiful questions. Both Shireen and you bring up beautiful points there. But to answer your questions, the how do people feel about their parents remarrying after a passing? It's everybody's different now. Many people at some point usually actually would love their parents to remarry, is the in my experience, maybe not right away, but they at
Mm,
some point recognize, oh, if the person's going to be having more fun in life, having somebody to share with and so forth, then they say, by all means, you go and live your life. And that is now at the beginning when people are grieving, when they come to me and
mm,
they're in a grieving state, then they usually might have still they're still resistance to the whole things.
mm,
And so that is the and there is a difference between acceptance and not having resistance. You might intellectually accept something. So in other words, there's a big difference between
mm,
being in denial and still having resistance. Just know that. And so with something like that, most people are not in denial anymore, but many people still have resistance. But when they are, and if they still have resistance to the then in many cases and it might manifest, it might express itself in multiple different ways. People don't sit there and say, yeah, but I'm aware of my subconscious resistance. They're expressing it just like Shireen says, and that's very true. Most people who are grieving, many people are not even aware they are grieving, because
mm,
grief does not always involve sadness.
mm,
Actually, in many different for in sadness is one of the expression of grief, but depend on what happened.
mm,
Many times grief expressed as something else. It could be as anger, it could be as anxiety, and a lot of different things. And so
mm,
with the resistance, back to the resistance, if people still have resistance to that, then they might still have resistance of somebody else moving forward as well, is basically what's the bottom line of it. If they
mm,
say, but I don't want my dad or my mom or whomever to be gone in their mind, and I don't want this and I don't want that, then if somebody else move forward, and this is happen, I see this
mm,
even the fire here. This area in California loves to get fire in, and there were a huge fire somewhere in California, and this was a few years back. I work with, and this is actually what I discussed this in this book here, Seeking Peace, the opening of Seeking Peace. This sibling experienced a really large, very destructive fire. And one person, the gentleman of this sibling, came to me, worked with me, and learned to, in a step by step and prompt manner, not rush but prompt manner, move forward beyond the experience, move forward and created actually a life that's even better than he was living before. His sister refused to allow help and so forth, even from him, and basically decide to shut down. Well, when this gentleman start to move forward in his life, guess what the sister do? The sister said, well, apparently you are with them and you're not with me. And she was angry at him for moving forward, for rebuilding and creating an even better life. And that's because she was still in the grief and has not been able to fully to fully make peace with that. And that's one thing that and then of course as life goes by, we know that grief is cumulative and cumulatively destructive, which is what you mentioned. You are sort of like mentioned or asking before, Shuri, and you said you wonder if this is the queen passing and so many people sad, is actually finally people being the tip of everything. Well, I think it's a little bit of both. The one is grief is cumulative and cumulatively destructive from all causes. I mentioned briefly 40 different causes of grief, and many people think grief from different things are separate. So, in other words, for instance, you lose your pet, you have a grief here, and you lose your home, you have a grief here, and you lose your loved one, you grieve here, and it's kind of like a bunch of little snowballs, so to say. That's not how grief operates. Grief is grief. Grief is your feeling. Grief is you. And so each of them actually add on top of each other. And of course, by definition, grief is the unsettling feelings caused by a change in your familiar routine or hope unmet. We all been experienced unless you really live in some really remote area. The last years we all experienced so much changes, and so this is just another layer of that. But also, I think part of it is this is an allowed expression. How many? This is the people are expressing because they're finally allowed to express. We just discussed just now when there are other causes of grief. Many people say grieve not, many people say be strong, and all this other thing. And now it's finally, even if you I think the UK is not very much different, but here in the United States, somebody, a family member passed away, you got 3 days, 3 days for bereavement. It's like, okay, yeah, go to the funeral now, right back to work. Okay, let's go. I mean, what was that all about? And now the public is actually allow a week and a half, mourn and grieve, and finally people said, okay, this is an opportunity, and just like many people say, be strong, be positive. This is these people who has experienced all these things, feeling the grief, and they're finally allowed to express their grief. And as long as nobody's telling them, you know what, I mean, you never even met the queen, or well, hello, she's already 96, what do you expect? But and there are still in a smaller circle. But as a public, they are now they have a space. Now they finally know. That's why people do the strangest thing, right? Bringing Paddington, adding pear and marmalade and putting it in your park. But it's an expression you need to express. And when I read that, I said, oh no, that's another way of blocking people expressions of love. Grief is love. It is grief is love. And people want to express it with bear and marmalade in this case. And so that is something that, yeah, it's an expression. At the end of the day, grief, it occur because you are able to love, and it's an expression of love that this time it's finally given the space for that. And everybody, of course, different. Now, I have actually a class, a public class that is free for everybody, an online class Friday next week, 3 p.m. Los Angeles times, on understanding and navigating through grief, because there are so many, as I mentioned briefly by now, so many myths, and Noom's has been to a similar but not the same class. Not so many myths about grief. There's 11 myths or misunderstanding that's so common in public about grief that make people like this get into a turmoil and afraid to talk about it and so forth.
Yeah.
So much.
What
Thank
what
you so much.
there?
It is such a fascinating topic, and thank you so much, because every time I hear these beautiful pearls of wisdom, they just sink in, and I just love it. I just absolutely love hearing you talk about something that's so important. Grief is a kind of way of showing love. I think that's a really beautiful statement, right? And it was interesting. It took me back to a memory, and thinking about delayed grieving and how sometimes we may not even know we are grieving. And I remember that when I think about my mother, who very rarely cried, except when she watched sad movies, right? So she didn't cry at any other time except sad movies. And it was like the sad movies gave her space, her time, that she could give reason for crying. And it gave her that space, and it was really interesting. So maybe where we think about the idea that grieving, you know, when we talked about, you know, people show grief in very different ways, is what is it that you're, when you're crying, is this really connected to what you're seeing and experiencing, or is it connected to something else? And to take some time to just really see about all those losses that you experience that may have accumulated, that may have kind of compiled together and are now showing up in this moment because they've all got trigger memories that then bring that in. And that kind of made me think a lot, you know, deeply for a moment. And I guess when I think of it as an expression of love, I'm thinking about when we're crying for that inner child or that inner being that didn't have those things, and or the loss of that she or he didn't have or would like to have, and that may still bring in those thoughts about future. So you may have those kinds of feelings of depression that might arise as a result of someone dying, not just about the loss of them going, but the loss of what that meant as a way forward into the future. So and one of the things which I really, and I suppose what I'm also keep thinking about is your resistance, the idea of resistance, and the idea of how we don't like something, so we resist it and we don't release into it so that we can start and open up and heal that place of grief in the honoring of it, in whatever it is. Yeah. So Nomsa.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I jumped in there. I'm sorry.
Shireen, now I need to get rid of the cry. There will be no more cry, Shireen. Now you said those words. There will be no more crying for me. When someone dies, I will learn to celebrate. I will to celebrate memories and send them off peacefully. And if anyone is watching and you want to get in touch with Dr. Biget, because she is a grieving coach, and if you're watching right now and you to someone and you know where to begin, get in touch with her, please, and have a free consultation with her. See if it's a good fit. And also for me, Dr. Biget and Shireen, I have a friend that she lost her son. Her son was killed, and her son grew up with my daughter. And when her son was killed, she was a very, she still is, I still believe that she still is a strong Christian within herself. She actually, when you talk to her, I feel that she feels that she was cheated of her son. I feel that she's angry with God because she stopped going to church all in all. And I feel that she feels that she was can you give someone who's the same situation, losing a child or losing a loved ones, and they feel that God robbed them or God does not exist, or if they believe in God? Because that's how I feel when I speak to my friends. Her son has been dead for is it 3 or 4 years now? Yeah, he was in 2000 and I think it's 6 years, 2016 or 17 in Colchester, in Essex. She's she's going through the court and stuff, even though these people that were found guilty never found peace. But she is moving with God. Where were you when my son was killed? And I am not gonna go to church if you do exist. But for me, what what I believe is, even though God is there, if anyone is watching and you believe in God, even though God is there, God cannot. Sometimes some things, God give us a warning. God can give us a warning. There are some things that as parents or as us, that when death is coming, if you look back your life, there's been a feeling as somebody that something is going to happen. We do get warnings, or sometimes if things evil things happen, we don't have control over it. Even God is there. Or sometimes it could be sins of our parents, it could be sins of our ancestors, or sometimes it could be you are at the wrong time, like that her son was at the wrong place. Someone walked in trying to, the thieves break in, and he woke up. He was sleeping, woke up. What is going on? So he got killed. So he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. So now she's angry. What advice can you get as a grieving for somebody who is going through that process? For me, when I speak to her, I try not to play as a therapist because she's my friend. So my job is to listen to her, and the job is to give her a hug and say, I'm here if you want to talk more. I can't play therapist. It's hard when somebody does not ask for your help. But a grieving coach, what advice can you give someone who is going through a similar situation?
So the advice that I would say for anyone going through a loss is first to know that it is a normal your reaction, and my heart goes to you. Whatever the cause of your loss, but to know that it is a normal and natural reaction. Your grieving is a normal and natural reaction to anything that you perceive as a loss, and to not let anyone tell you what to feel. It doesn't matter who the anyone is, and it could your pastor, your parents, your neighbor, your therapist, your dog, your magazine. To not let anyone that your feelings, there is a difference between feelings and thoughts, but your feelings are always valid, and to listen to your heart. And then that would be the number one advice, because a lot of times in this world we are so invalidated, and to know that your heart speaks a different language than your mind. So rationalizing things, making reasons of things is this up here. It's intellectual, it's the business of the mind. On the other hand, your heart here works very differently, speaks different language, including the crying. Look at the baby. How do how do kids communicate? They cry. It's okay and it's normal and it's healthy and it is smart actually to cry. And that is one of the few ways that the heart communicates. The heart speaks heart language. The heart moves in a heart time frame. And that's why everybody's grief at different. There's no timeline for grieving, and then sometimes you go to counseling or some other resource. You say, yep, you got to be. It's been 3 months. You got to be here, and in 3 months, it's got to be here. It's been set 9 months. You need to be fitting in these the stages of grief. First of all, the stages of grief are created for people who are facing terminal illness, nothing else. But There is everybody's different. Yeah, I always give an analogy of my background's Indonesian. You might hear me speak with quite a bit of an accent. And my background's Indonesian, and Indonesians a whole different culture here, particularly certain area like the central Java, for instance, in Indonesia. So now imagine, the way the Western culture go. It's gonna almost like our mind here.
Mm.
Go. And then and he was speaking English and go. Now imagine you take this and go to the central Java in Indonesia, and you have this beautiful idea, a beautiful concept, magnificence, whatever, perhaps it's a business. You go to an Indonesian who move in Indonesian's time frame, so to say, and you go there and talk to this wonderful banker, whatever, about your magnificent idea in English. It will not go at all because if the person don't speak English, you will be like, "What gibberish are you talking about?" And then if you are in Indonesia, even if you are speaking Indonesia and you are trying to operate at the same speed in here, you will be highly frustrated. First of all, because Indonesians say, "Oh yeah, well, okay, yeah, you told me to that the party is 7 to starting at 7 o'clock. It's only 8:30. What do you mean I'm late?"
I know that one.
That is a freaking time too.
Want them to come at 7. If you don't want them to come at 7, you need to speak with the Indonesian way. You say the party start at 4. They'll be there between 6:30 and 7. Okay, so that is you'll be like and the heart says, "That's me. That's just me." So grief is a heart business, and heart speaks very certain language and express itself in very certain language. Crying actually been shown by many studies. It's healing because it triggers certain physiologic things in our body.
Mm.
By seeking peace invest quite a bit of pages in there encouraging people to cry. But that's just a couple quick answers to your questions there. But in general, just remember, if you're going through things, your feelings are valid. Don't let anybody tell you you should feel otherwise. Now, if you're going through anger and you don't feel it's serving you, it's causing you discomfort in life and so forth, then there are ways to move beyond that. There was a one time a lady who came to us in a similar tragic way. Her child was killed by a drunk driver. It's understandable that you are angry. It's understandable that you continue to be angry afterwards. Now, the Grief Recovery Institute says there is the 1% responsibility. You're not responsible to anything that's happening out there at all, but you are responsible on how you're going to feel from today on. If you say, "I want to continue to feel this way," there are some people who come to us and say, "You know what, actually, I want to be angry for a little bit longer time." There are
Mm.
some people who went through my class. I'm not a counselor. I teach class on grief. It's that simple. You take it as 6 weeks or a 12 weeks class. And how I decide is based on my discussions with you and what best suits you. But you take others. Some people go through the class and then they say at some point they say, "You know what? I want to simmer in this for a couple more weeks. Yeah, I just don't want to do this," and that is okay. That is
Mm.
absolutely fine. You move through it. You say, "You know what? I want to simmer in this for a few more weeks." That is absolutely fine. And for some, the concept of releasing resistance beautiful, but many times we could not, and that's okay. All you need to do is to be willing to be willing. You
Mm.
just need to be willing to release. You need to be willing to do certain things if you want to know to not be in pain anymore. But it's okay if you say, "I still want to be angry. I still want to be angry. I choose consciously to be angry." Okay, by all means, that is you. Everyone is unique, right? And everyone's meant to be unique, just like our fingerprint. And allow your heart to speak and allow the space and the time for your heart to speak
Mm.
in the heart language.
Mm. Thank you
So
so much, Dr. Bigger. Doreen, do you have any comment?
Oh, there is so much wisdom in that. I loved your idea about the reminder that the heart speaks a different language, but that it doesn't have time. And I think that's a really poignant piece of information that people need. The time. There isn't time. The heart doesn't have time. In the sense of the same way as we do from a cognitive sense of time. And so how can we put a time limit on grief? And at the same time, I think there's a couple of things which may be very helpful for people listening, and I think that it's useful anyway as a therapist, is you need to express your emotions, which is absolutely, yeah, you want to be angry. Yes, absolutely. And I also think they need to know when it's going to stop serving them. So there's something about how does, because the anger can feed and snowball into kind of something else, which isn't, because these things do. But what is it that they need if they're going into anger? What is it they need? How long do they need to be angry for? And what needs to change for them to know that they can let it go and release it? So there's those two things which matter, because I think honoring the anger is so important. Who wouldn't be angry that somebody had died and been taken away from your life? And it seems so unfair. And part of anger is a motivator. Yeah, it gets us out of depression so that we don't stay in that place. And it's, in a way, it's a survival mechanism. So it's useful to kind of go, okay, so where are you in anger and you're not going into processing grief? So, there are these kinds of spaces. When will it come down enough that you can feel the pain of the loss, or the pain of that you don't have anymore? And just to honor and be able to honor that as a truth in itself as well, and not necessarily change it. How do we move then to hold that grief and allow it to be comfortable with it as it resolves? So that really sings to me. And I suppose I was triggered because, as I said, I'm moving back to working with pregnancy, which is the start of life. And that's quite an interesting thing in itself, because we've got a death coach or a grief coach, we've got a birth coach here. And I'm thinking, in the sense that one of our, as you said, as a baby, we have this primitive way of crying, which lets us know that we need help, or we need support, or we need something. Come get me, please. And there are different kinds of cries. And I wonder if that is and the idea of how we self-soothe the moment we have that release, how that might be that we still have kept that as that mechanism, and we don't. And as a child, we didn't have language. So when we cry, we often don't know why we're crying. So we go, yeah, we can have some sad things and go, why am I crying? Like watching a TV movie, why am I really crying? And I'm wondering whether that is, something that could be really explored a little deeper. The language of the heart. How do we access that? How do we really sit in that so that we can truly, truly, truly hear what it is saying? Because it'll tell us when we can stop. It'll tell us when we can let go. Because I've asked people, how long do you need to be angry for? And they'll say, oh, just a couple of weeks. I'll be fine after a couple of weeks. I know that's my process. I know that's my moment. I need to have about that much to keep myself energetically up so that I can then develop or have enough resilience to experience the feeling when it goes. Yeah. So yeah, that really, really resonated for me. And I thank you for that, because it was a brilliant reminder. to have that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biggett and Shireen. And if there is anyone who is watching and you're pregnant and you need some help, Shireen is here for you. And Shireen, do you want to explain what you do to the audience, please, so they can get in touch with you and work with you?
Sure, thank you so much. Yes, basically what I help women is have a conscious pregnancy and birth. And that's slightly different from just having a birth. It is about really understanding what it means to go through birth in a very calm and helpful way so that you can set up success for your baby, but also that that basically in that period of time that we're in the baby's in the uterus, we have the maximum opportunity to shift and change a lot of the inherited kinds of traumas that we may have experienced by actually helping self-regulate. So if when we carry that, we know that we, as a conscious birther, we know that we can shift and change because we're already carrying the stuff that we've had before, and we can release that. And that means that our child has more opportunity in the world. And we do too, because we become more conscious mothers, and we need more consciousness in the earth, really, in order to shift and change. So I do conscious coaching, and I do that on a one-to-one, but also I tend to do it more as a group now, because as a collective, when you're supported, you can't do things on your own. People that support each other actually have a much better opportunity to have a really good birth and a good support network. So that's what conscious pregnancy is about.
So much. Thank you so much, Shireen. Is and take action, and you can get in touch with Shireen through her social media or talk shows. If you can't get her, please get in touch with me. I will connect you with Shireen. And Dr. Biggett, please, can you explain to our audience what you do for your coaching, grieving coaching, so our audience can actually look you up and connect with you? There's so many people who are grieving and they don't know what to do. I was one of them that I didn't know. It took me years and years to grieve for my parents. And if I knew that I could find a grieving coach, I was going through psychologies, but they were not going through this head. This head had not made a decision to actually let it go. So please, Dr. Big.
Thank you, Numsa. And yes, and that is your experience speaks to most clients' experience. Actually, almost practically all my suicide watch client has been, and most are in counseling. Sadly, nothing against counseling, but a lot of time it's make us make sense about things. But this is up here instead of the hard language, which we can have a whole nother discussions about that, Shirin. But I'm a grief specialist, so I don't do a lot of personality disorder, this and that. I literally help you with grief, whatever the cause of your grief, and it could be the loss of a loved one, definitely a loss of a public figure like the Queen, that now you realize that you're carrying grief, and now it's simmering and become apparent with you. Whatever the cause of your grief, all I do really is teaches you how to navigate grief, and that's the course is either 6 or 12 weeks. It's very simple. It's not even counseling. It's not even counseling. It's something like you take any other online course that you take seriously. You come in, you have reading material, you have video, and you have discussions as well. And it teaches you the tools that you can use over again and again and again, because life is life. So an evergreen tool that will allow you to be able to navigate your grief. in the way that feels good to you. I actually have a free online event Friday next week. So not this Friday, but the what is it? The 23rd. Free online event on navigating grief, because as Shirin pointed out earlier, this brings out a lot of actually brings out or actually allow people to recognize their grief. And so you will, I'll post the information shortly as well for you, Nimsa, if you want.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biget. And please, at Ngozi Talk Shows, we help you find your own voice, lead from within. If you want a one-on-one with any of our coaches, or you want more than one coaches, we can get to Zoom. Please get in touch with us. We'll help you find your own voice and lead from within. It could be grief, it could be pregnancy. You need pregnancy coaching, you need love, looking for love, getting ready into the dating scene, or struggling with confidence, and the list goes on. Or you want to start your own business. We have all touch with. Don't just watch the and serve it and not taking action. Remember, action is results, and the results, it means living the life that you want. So God bless everyone and live with grace. If you want to get in touch with me, you're looking for love, my website is just there. Get in touch. We'll sort everything out. Live with grace, everyone, and God bless.